which allowed women the right to vote. They determined that they had some time on their hands and decided to go about protecting the rights of other people to be able to vote and have done so since. Right now, we are busy preparing for our primary focus, which is voter education and advocacy, which is everyone in the league is focused on that in some way or another. And we have a lot of activities going on in different interest groups and areas. If you're interested in more information about that, we can certainly help you. And please know that, especially at the United States level, the LWV US, one of the ways that they protect voter rights is by litigating. And they have done that and are doing it right now in several situations in states and with the federal government to protect the rights of voters to be able to access their ballots freely and fairly. So thank you again for attending this wonderful presentation. I'm very happy to introduce Crystal O'Neill, who is our Eyewitness and Observer Corps coordinator. And she's going to be joined by Linda Shapley, who is our liaison to the Eyewitness Program that's run through the state of Colorado. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Crystal.
Hey everyone. Most of you probably are already familiar with the Observer Corps work that the League does in each of the regional units. Our key focus here is to emphasize transparency in government. And so we send volunteers to sit in on local government meetings and take notes and then report back to the League on what happened at the meeting and if there's any action that the League might want to take. So, for example, if there's issues with, like, for example, in Lakewood, there's a big housing issue that's been debated in City Council and is going up for a vote. So that's an important thing with voter advocacy to have us know what's going on with that information. The Colorado Sunshine Law says that all government agencies are supposed to have all of their meetings public, and so we are part of the public too. So I encourage everybody to attend some of your city and local meetings. They're very fascinating. If you're not, these county commissioners, school boards, city council, there's special district meetings that take place if you're interested in those. And for any of our Jefferson County folks, if you're interested in being part of the Observer Corps, my email address is on this slide. Please reach out. I'll get you all the training and information you need and get you started. We have lots of agencies that we aren't able to sit in on, so we always need volunteers. With that, recently we have partnered with the Eyewitness Program in Jefferson County to promote additional transparency in local government by connecting with our local journalists. And the Eyewitness Program is that our observer corps or other individuals can sit in on these local government meetings and then report back. It's a little more extensive a report that they produce, and that those are all put up on our Substack. And I've put our Substack address here on this slide for you guys to take a look at. And Linda can tell us more about how the Eyewitness Program came to be, where we are now, and where we are going in the future.
Great. Thank you, Crystal. And welcome to everyone. I'm so glad that you could all join us today. My name is Linda Shapley. As noted, I'm kind of essentially the project manager for the Eyewitness Program. And it was something that, started with essentially where we are in journalism today. And I've been in the news business for about 30-ish years. And certainly the landscape has undergone significant changes. In the face of declining revenues, a number of news organizations are grappling with a number of different needs. They need to innovate as consumer behavior shifts in terms of how people get their news. There's a need to maintain trust amid increasing polarization. And there's a need to ensure that they're serving diverse and underserved communities. And, at the same time, media outlets are facing additional challenges in terms of securing funding or competing in this increasingly crowded digital space. And, those challenges have real world consequences. Local news organizations are closing their doors or they're cutting their staff in order to survive. And as that happens, communities lose access to reliable information about the issues that matter most to them. And that decline in coverage leads to disengagement. It leads to a rise of misinformation and a lack of accountability from public officials. And a lot of those reasons are why the League of Women Voters kind of like took their longtime observer program and turned it into the Eyewitness Corps, and that the work that they were doing in order to observe the issues that folks care about was something that just needed that extra step of helping go to news organizations and to the broader public, and that they recognize the importance of empowering citizens to stay informed and engaged. And it encourages those community members to attend public meetings, report on the key decisions, and then share those findings across, on the Substack. And I'll drop that a link to that Substack in the chat as well. Just so then that way you can click on it and go and see what's been done so far. Jefferson County in particular has been incredibly active with the Eyewitness program, which is fantastic. League members are attending county commission meetings, school board meetings, city council meetings, and their reports are in that Substack link. So today we're going to talk with some esteemed news leaders in local and nonprofit news, in order to help kind of go through some of the underlying challenges for news media, and to explain why programs like Eyewitness can help ensure critical local issues are covered, and how we can all have a part to play in building a stronger, more inclusive media landscape. So I'll introduce our panelists. Suzie Glassman is the News Innovation Lead and Senior Education Reporter at the Colorado Trust for Local News, which owns publications in Jefferson and Adams counties, and Weld County. Brittany Winkfield is the Executive Director of the Colorado Ethnic Media Exchange, which supports organizations statewide. And Kevin Simpson is reporter and co-founder of the nonprofit Colorado Sun, which has become a model for sustainable local journalism in Colorado and beyond. So thank you all for being here today. So first off, I'd love for the three of you to just kick off this conversation talking a little bit about your role at the organization and what you see as shaping the media landscape. And Suzie, we'll start with you.
Okay, great. Well, thanks, Linda, for having me and reaching out to me. So yeah, just a quick background. I cover the school districts. I cover Jefferson County, Adams 12, Westminster Public Schools, 27J in Brighton, and then Weld RE8 up in Fort Lupton. So that's a lot. But I absolutely love the education beat, and I've been doing it, I guess, close to 2 years now. Let me try to think about the second part of your question, which now is escaping me. Tell me again.
Shaping the media landscape. What do you see?
Oh, yeah. It's interesting. I spoke to high school students recently. There's a lot of different dynamics happening. It's harder and harder to reach younger audience. They're getting a lot of their news from social media, and Instagram and TikTok, and then, we still very much, appreciate all of our demographics. Obviously, as an education reporter, I'm reaching to families, to working families, parents, grandparents, anybody who has a vested interest in what's happening in the schools. And so trying to figure out where to connect with people, I think, is one of the biggest challenges, and then how to connect with them. And then not only to connect them, but but to engage with them in a way that I think is more interactive. So, getting that feedback, getting that, that two-way conversation going, I think, so that the community that we report to helps shape the news that we cover. I'm just one journalist, and what I think is interesting may not be the most interesting or the most pressing needs of, or what people really want to know about. So I think that's just a big challenge that we're working on, and something that I think about quite often.
Yeah. Thank you. Brittany.
Hi, good evening, everyone, and thank you, Linda, for the invitation. I'm thrilled to be here, just to be in this space talking about my favorite subject is just well-informed communities that allows us to make well-informed decisions. I am with the Colorado Ethnic Media Exchange, or CME, as we call it for short. It is an advertising network, and in this, it is very innovative from my point of view, that we are doing a revenue shared model, whereas, in times past, there's been this competition factor within publications and kind of, keeping what you get. But I'm just thrilled that the publishers of the exchange have allowed this experiment to happen. And so far, it's been working for our advertising partners to reach these audiences that the publications have built over time and have really gained the trust of the community. It's just so wonderful to see. So we're 2 years strong, and my background, I've done a lot of everything. I've been on the editorial side, and for 20 years, I've just seen the evolution of the Colorado ecosystem and journalism. I feel like it's always been changing, but we're in a time right now that it's just, newsrooms are smaller, budgets are tighter, trust is dissolving, and yet there's this great need and want of fact-based, culturally responsive news and information and, these trusted sources. And so I say, I want to do everything I can to support the publishers of CME and beyond, right? Like, just to know in our own communities that I feel the news systems are the lifeblood of like how we connect to one another, how we are showing up for our families, and ultimately, again, just making those decisions when it comes down to our voting actions and behaviors. And I think also just the day-to-day, right? I feel it trickles down to every factor in our life. So
Absolutely. Thank you, Brittany. So Kevin.
Well, as you said, I was one of the 10 founders of the Colorado Sun. I was at the Denver Post for 33 years prior to that, and at the Rocky Mountain News for 5 before that. So I've seen a lot of the changes that you talked about, Linda, in so many different ways. But you all probably maybe at least be passingly familiar with the story of the Sun, that it was basically 10 of us who got tired of working for the hedge fund that was ruining the Denver Post, in our estimation, certainly cutting and slashing and reducing the numbers of reporters who were able to get out there and hold public officials accountable and do everything from reviewing books to covering City Hall. So we had an opportunity to create this startup. We had about a 2-year runway of funding, and for various reasons, we decided to take the plunge. I mean, I am by far the oldest of the group. I just turned 70, but we also have people in their 20s. And when we made the jump, for some of us, like me, it was like, I got nothing to lose. This will be my last act here. But for others, this was, they really needed and wanted to make this work long term. So we have evolved as an organization and tried to respond to a lot of the things that you all have talked about here, the changing landscape of the media, trying to meet people where they are, where they live, and make that connection to a readership. And it's been an uphill battle because we were 10 journalists who knew how to do journalism, but we didn't know how to do business. That's for sure. But we corrected that now, we hope, in a number of ways with some very judicious hires, paying attention to the business side of our operations, which you have to have in order to be sustainable. And as you may know, we are now a nonprofit organization, which opened up a number of funding avenues for us that you don't have as a strictly for-profit company. So with that, I'll toss it back to you, Linda, who, by the way, was one of my favorite people at the Denver Post. When I worked on a project, you pour hours and hours and days and weeks into it, and you hand it over to Linda, and she just worked magic with it.
Oh.
And I have framed copies here to back that up.
Thanks, Kevin. It is one of my greatest things. And I believe one of the things that I had first said about Kevin is I started as a copy editor, and I would tell people that I had to really fight to keep editing something that Kevin wrote because I just wanted to read it because it was really that good to read. So, I think that there's a lot of love and admiration for what we were able to do at the Post. And that's what kind of made so many things that happened at the Sun, or, with what was happening at the Post and the rise of the Sun, something that just had to be because we all had something we loved there.
Absolutely.
So, please, the next thing we'll just kind of go into a little bit of the challenges. And one of the challenges actually that a number of you have talked about is that notion of the underserved communities. In a lot of ways, there were things that as newspapers contracted, that communities that may have gotten some visibility all of a sudden got zero. And I'll never forget being at an event where it was with the Colorado News Collaborative, and they were asking people about, like, where do you get your news? And they were like, I have to get it from social media because I don't see myself in the news organizations that are, allegedly reporting on us. So Brittany, with the Colorado Media Exchange, you're working closely with a number of ethnic media outlets such as the Africa Digest, Asian Avenue, or Sol de Valle in the mountains. So how are their challenges different than some other mainstream organizations might deal with? And, what do you think that they're doing right in terms of connecting with these communities?
Yeah, great question, Linda. Thank you. I have always been a local media advocate and just really seeing the value of diversity in the newsroom. It really adds to more than one perspective in running a story. And this is, print, again, editorial, broadcast journalism. It really makes that much of a difference when even one is helpful than none. I do have the opportunity to serve on the Colorado Association of Black Journalists. And the conversation is always about how this diversity is not a trend, but just how necessary it is, thinking about who's telling the story and how it's shaped, how it's framed, really understanding like the sources and, having this lived experience. I think accurate representation, it does require, just when you look at the hiring perspective, hiring journalists from the communities that are being covered. We often say like nothing about us without us. Just having that voice in the room and investing in mentorship pipelines really just help maintaining the transparency in editorial decisions when it comes to making that diversity decision. So I would say it's just not optional or nice to have, but we really advocate for multiple perspectives in the newsroom.
So Kevin, from your perspective, I feel like that the Sun is doing a lot in terms of trying to bridge the gaps for rural and underserved areas. You know, how does, is that part of the nonprofit mission? Is that more of just like what you all see as kind of like your one of the things that you can do at the Sun?
Right. When we started out, we knew from the get-go we wanted to be a statewide publication. Okay, and when you have 10 people, that's a bit of a challenge, right? Big state, big state. But what we've done is we really have very consciously tried to spread ourselves out and cover those communities. And you mentioned rural. I've done a lot of stories on the Eastern Plains. That's kind of become my area, I guess. Different reporters have kind of carved out different areas that either because they live close by or it just corresponds to their beat or what have you. But we decided that we wanted to be whatever Colorado needed us to be. That was like just about the only sort of framing of a mission statement, I guess, that we ever had. But we have tried and we've been successful in some ways. I mean, we've covered stories. I mean, I personally have been down as far south as, excuse me, as Branson, Colorado, which is the southernmost town. I've been, out on the Eastern Plains, and where we have not been as much as we would like is northern Colorado. And it's really important because when you talk about the contracting news business, look at Fort Collins. I mean, it is an unfortunate case in point. I think they just have, literally a handful of people up there trying to cover a city of significant size and a region that's, very important, economically, politically, you name it. So we currently have, as sort of a mission that we're on now is to go to those areas. We've already been up there and done what we call listening sessions, where we just, invited community members to come in and talk to us about, what is not being covered? What do you, want to see covered? What can we do to help? Give us, ideas of things that you would like to see us address. And so we are at the very beginning of that process, and it's not going to happen overnight, but we are making this conscious effort to go into northern Colorado. And strangely enough, as it may seem, we also need to go into urban Denver, downtown Denver, just in the neighborhoods all over. We sort of made this very conscious decision of not wanting to be a Denver-centric publication, and maybe we kind of took it to the extreme the other way. Other than we do tremendous state house coverage, but beyond that, as far as covering nuts and bolts of Denver, we haven't done a lot, and we need to do more. But again, we're growing. We started with 10. We're up to about 30 people now. Not all reporters, but as we grow, we are trying to sort of grow into the state as well and become a much better source of news all over.
Right. Yeah. And, if you do need a partner in that, my day job is I'm with Rocky Mountain Student Media here at CSU. So there's a team of very hungry journalists who would be ready to work with you.
Well, absolutely. We're always looking for that.
Yeah. So, Suzie, as an education reporter, so what strategies have you found in being effective to ensure that underserved communities are getting represented in your coverage?
I'll say kind of along the lines of what Kevin was saying, some of the more shocking things that I have realized in the reporting that I'm doing is, because outlets like Chalkbeat, even like Colorado Public Radio, some of the longtime education reporters are now working with a skeleton staff, that I happen to be probably one of the very few, if not the only reporters who is still actively covering Jefferson County School District on a very deep level. And they're the second largest school district in the state, right? So it's a bit crazy. So I will talk about some of the collaborative nature of Colorado journalisms, because or Colorado's news outlets in a bit. But I think that has grown out of necessity, because we all realize we can't cover it all, right?
Yeah.
And so we lean on each other. But the way I approach it, and I think the way our newsroom does, we may not be racially diverse, which I think is something that we could really improve upon, but we do live. We all live in the communities that we're reporting on. And I think that's very important when it comes to local coverage. I have a daughter who is in the Jefferson County School District, so I am also a parent. And it just informs, every story I choose to cover, everything I think is important to dig into, because I know, if I'm reporting on a student or something going on, like, I just know as a parent, like, this matters to me. And I know as someone who lives, in this community and deals with the consequences of decisions that school boards make, like, I think that everyone should know, or be able to at least have an idea of what, a governing body, so a school district in my case, but a city council, or, a mayor or something, they sit in a room and make decisions that really do affect our daily lives. And I want to use my reporting to kind of translate that to people and say, like, what does this matter to me? And not only to me, but to what does it matter to the Hispanic population in this school that is 80% Hispanic, high free and reduced lunch count. What does it mean in another school where they have a high number of students who have a learning disability, right? Or, there's so many underrepresented communities, like within schools, within teacher groups, within, like, you could subdivide it forever. But I approach every story looking for ways to bring out those voices. And in some ways, I feel like I have been successful connecting with different communities. In other ways, I wish, like, speaking with students is that I really, really difficult. I would love to be able to talk to students more. But yeah, I'm always trying. So yeah.
That's good. That's good. So I'm going to switch. One of the things, if anybody has questions or anything like that you'd like to deliver to the panels, feel free to throw it in the chat, and I'll look to kind of answer those questions just based as everything is going through. But I'm going to switch just a little bit, and we're going to talk about innovation, which, Suzie, I'm going to go ahead and just stick with you. You've been working hard to use kind of technology or different tools to help transform the journalism. And I hear it in terms of what you're talking about with outreach and that sort of thing. Share some of the most promising innovations that you're seeing or that you're doing. And I think I would really love for you to bring up kind of the calculator that you put forth that kind of shows some of that. I think that's like a really good, innovative solution.
Okay, great. Well, I will try to not be super long-winded on this answer, but one of the great things is the Colorado Trust. We're also a nonprofit organization. It's owned by a national trust. We had a new leader come in who is full speed ahead on innovation. And so he actually created a pitch process for journalists and editors to kind of pitch him your best ideas that could lead to innovation in a newsroom. And so I pitched an idea that was built on making news more interactive, right? So how can we go from just passive reading of an article to how can I help put somebody into the shoes of the person on the school board? Or how can I show them through, whether it's like a game or a multiple choice or something like that, what it's like to sit as a superintendent and have to make these decisions, because they're not easy, right? And they're also very difficult for a journalist to explain. So I pitched that idea. As part of that idea, we ended up hooking up with an organization called Polco. They work with a lot of city governments to get data. I, th They do a lot of behind the scenes work. So, like, if a city puts out a poll or a survey or a budget simulation or something like that, they have that data, and they were interested in working with journalists as a way to take this technology that they had and give it to a broader audience. So, what Linda's talking about is one of the things they had developed was a taxpayer receipt tool. So you put in, what your estimated like the market value of your home, and it kind of gives you a receipt. Here's where your property taxes are going. I took the tool and translated it specifically to the school district. So I took a little bit complicated, but the number of mills the school district collects times the assessment rate. And then it translates into where you literally get a receipt like you would get at a store, and break that down into this much is going to pay for administration. This much of your property taxes is going to pay for classrooms, teachers, those sorts of things. And so that's one of the ways. We're just trying to make news more useful for people. So instead of just the average homeowner pays, right? You can say like, okay, let me put in my homeowner, right? And then I can see it. So, and then I've used some other tools that look at prioritizing. So if you in 27J school district is remapping all of their school boundary zones, and they're basing it on certain priorities. So I just created a tool that says, hey, if this is your priority, like skip ahead, right? And it takes you to like, these are the consequences of that decision. And it's one of those where like nobody really wins. Like there's trade-offs for all of them. So yeah, and I'm looking at exploring other ways to do kind of budget simulation tools and ask people like, okay, if you had to cut $10 million from your budget, where would you cut it? How would you do it? Those sorts of things. So yeah, that's what we're looking into for innovation. And yeah, just really trying to bring people in more in ways that like some other, like the New York Times has been very successful at. Yeah, and lucky enough to have a news organization behind us that's very much supporting it.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So Kevin, especially because it's, as you said, the Sun started with 10 journalists, and that you've kind of had to adopt some innovative practices. I think one of the things that I always think about a lot is the Sunfest, and that, kind of moving into this level of events as a way to kind of like a different way to share news. Talk to me a little bit about the ideas behind it, or what you feel like worked well in terms of bringing that idea to life.
Yeah, well, I think there have been a number of things that you mentioned, practices that we do that are innovative. They're not technological. They're very low tech, in fact, but they're sort of foundational in terms of wanting to connect in person with our audience whenever possible. Of course, the pandemic, played havoc with that. Although we did learn how to do Zoom, right? So we could do things like this. But we did start Sunfest, and we've got the next one coming up on May 1st. It's a full day of, I guess you'd call it a symposium, where we have panels on a variety of topics, policy, some politics, sometimes some fun stuff too. I'm going to be part of a panel on aging, which I am an authority on now. But we did a series on aging in Colorado because, as you all know from looking around you, we're getting older, and we're getting older actually faster than most states are. So we're going to have a panel. We have one guest is going to be a decluttering person. I did a big story on why we have so much stuff and how we can have, learn to live with less of it, and how to do that. So we'll have somebody doing that or talking about that. We have somebody talking about housing. We have somebody talking about what do you do after retirement. There are programs out there that address that very specifically. So that's a way for us to deal, directly with our readers. And it's great to, be there all day and just be surrounded by people who are constantly coming up and saying, oh, we appreciate what you're doing. It's great to put a face to the work that we read. And that's something we're not exactly pioneers in that. There's a lot of newspapers, media outlets doing that, including one I wrote about in Kansas, very small rural paper that was kind of on its deathbed, and that they revived the paper in part by just doing events. And it did a number of things. First of all, it did remind readers that, hey, we're here and we want to interact with you. It happened to be in a red state, it was in Kansas, and they felt that it was particularly important to connect with readers because at the time I did the story, the media were being portrayed as enemies of the people. We all are familiar with that narrative out there, and this was a way for them to remind people that, hey, these are your neighbors. These journalists are not your enemies; they're your neighbors. So, and they found that paid off not only intrinsically but also economically as well. So, yes, in terms of innovation, that type of event focused stuff is really important to us. But I'll tell you, maybe the biggest change, and Linda, you were in the news business back when the news and the Rocky and the Post were just head to head every day, beating your brains out. It was competitive. Well, it's not competitive anymore. It's collaborative, and that's what we have to be to survive. We have to help each other, and I know we do that with rural papers. I know any number of stories that I've done on rural towns or issues, we have just allowed their local papers who struggle to get coffee. I mean, they don't have a big staff. It might be a one-person operation. And we're like, absolutely, use our story, just credit us so people know that the Colorado Sun is out there, but by all means, use the story. So we're seeing more and more of that on every different level in journalism here in Colorado.
Right. Yeah, that's a very good point, Kevin. Just in terms of that partnership and collaboration, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But yeah, I think that's absolutely one of the ways that Colorado journalism has found some real strength. So, Brittany, on that same notion of innovation, what do you see as kind of the biggest risks and rewards of adopting certain technologies such as AI or doing something data driven or something like that, and how do you see that playing into ethnic media?
Yes. Kevin, I just have to say thank you for saying that. I believe Colorado is leading the way in its collaborative media ecosystem. I've been to so many different conferences, and I feel like they're getting close to cracking the code, but I just feel like we're very lucky to be in this state that gets it and welcomes it and gets to benefit from it. I think that is how CME was born, and it really just changed. It changed the newsrooms from perhaps being on a deathbed to now having some brand new revenue that they didn't have, or even being able to attract a partner, a certain partner alone, but collectively we're able to do that. And I just know some of the technology we've adapted has allowed it to, well, it's made my job easier in that we're able to upload, let's say, a video advertisement to a website. I'm able to upload it one time and it deploys to the network. Is able to be live instantly through what we're using, Broad Street, an ad server that just really, I think, automates a lot of this process. And again, even that technology tool, like whereas it might be very expensive for one newsroom to acquire and utilize, with a small staff, the cost is well worth it when we're sharing it with a network of 12 partners, and then being able to have those analytics, reports to share back to our advertisers. It just really helps us, and I think that was a surprise that we didn't see coming. But really, that has been the success of how we report out, how we're able to use those examples to attract more business, and again, just all new revenue to the newsrooms that are participating. I think also, just speaking on AI use, and I know our publishers are hesitant, and as they should be, just wanting to allow our journalists to use their skills that they went to school for and really honed in. And even I know some interns that I work with personally, they're wanting to just get experience going to city council meetings, reporting on that. But it does help, I think, in their note taking and collection of as they're listening to interviews. I know Descript is a large one that's used in at least transcribing, and then allowing reporters to write their stories and really just get those skills. So I think, I don't know, I'm just really having like mentorship heavy on my mind, and allowing our seasoned journalists to work with interns in that way. I see them introducing maybe new tools and even AI tech, but it's really kind of magical to see the cross-generational relationships happen, and just the education as well for both parties. That has been a space that I'm enjoying observing. So thank you, Linda, for the link to see me.
So yeah, I think that what I see for at the student level is I see that there's definitely like a big distrust of AI, and that it is trying to make sure that it's like, this is a tool. This is a tool like anything else. One of the things that I think, those of us who were around when the internet kind of came into being was that notion that everybody's like, it's a fad. I can remember actually when I interviewed at the Post, the editor kind of very much dismissing it, and I think that was to our peril. And so I think it's something that we need to be aware, and we need to make sure that we're using it correctly and ethically, and everything that kind of goes along with that. And then hopefully, then it becomes a great tool for us to be able to do more. And so I think that that's definitely the place where we need to be in terms of embracing AI. That's my feeling about it. I don't know if Kevin or Suzie, if you have different feelings about artificial intelligence and its future.
Yeah, I mean, I can jump in and add. I see it as a very efficient, low-paid assistant. Because, like, for not a lot of money, it's a very efficient assistant. I'm not one of those who ever thinks that AI is going to replace my job. There's so much work that journalists do before we ever write a draft, right? That requires human judgment. So what is the story? What is the news? And then, you guys who are eyewitnesses for these meetings, I mean, there's so much human context that AI just will never be able to understand. Yeah, it could read a transcript and summarize a meeting, but can it tell you why you should care? Can it tell you what it means, for this neighborhood and what it means for that neighborhood? I don't know, but the ways that it helps me are so useful in the sense that I can one of the stories I did, I was trying to track down if a oversight committee had ever been formed. The Jeffco school district, if you've read this article, they passed a mill levy in 2018, and so I literally plugged in quarterly financial statements and board meeting transcripts for 7 years into AI, right? And then had it evaluate it and asked it questions. And then, based on the answers, I could go to, I would say in the March 2024 financial, it said this. And then I go look and see, did it say that? Yes, it said that, right? So, I did a lot of verification, but I feel like that a story like that would have taken me 4 months to do. And instead, it took like 2 weeks. So, and maybe newsrooms in the past had people who could take these core requests and do this kind of thing on, for a reporter. We just don't have that anymore.
Right.
So I will say, like, in those ways, it's very useful. I use it sometimes as an editor to say, like, check for typos, check for AP style, those sorts of things. I don't have it right for me, but I do use it in other ways that I think, unfortunately, newsrooms just don't have people that they used to pay to do these things. But I don't see it ever becoming, a main source of news. Certainly not. So that's my stance.
Well, I would just add to that. I don't use it for specific tasks so much as it's part of an app that I use, and maybe you guys use it as well, called Otter. It's a transcription in real time that is an absolute game changer in journalism. When you go out and you do an interview, I can, record on my phone. I call up the app, and it uses AI to not just record, but to transcribe. And it's not perfect. You can really see the imperfections, but it gives you a basis to work from. You can see the text in front of you. You can listen to the tape as well and correct any errors. So, just to reiterate what everybody else is saying, that I think that as a tool, it's fine, but I get really uneasy when it's writing stories for us. And I think we've probably all seen enough of it now. You've probably been reading something, probably online, maybe on social media, and you read it and you recognize the same cadence or the same writing style. And you go, oh, this is AI. You know right off the bat, this is AI. And so it'll get better, I suppose, and that's kind of scary, but a tool, I think, is the watchword.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's funny. And often it'll be like, and what somebody told me is that anything that's being written by AI is super basic. And do we really want to be basic? And that's that's where I think hopefully there's still a need for great observers and great eyewitnesses and great journalists, that everybody can work together in that. So let's switch a little bit and just talk a little bit more about the financial sustainability question. This was something that certainly, as Kevin had mentioned, and I think there was somebody had mentioned in the chat, of just talking about that, this wave of cuts that have come to journalism have done a lot to harm the community fabric for us. And part of that, comes from just this, striving now. Every news organization is kind of like, it's their never-ending question about how they stay financially sustainable. So, Kevin, the Sun certainly, as you mentioned, gained recognition for kind of like finding a way to do this. I mean, I think that, the amount of people who have volunteered to give you money for a product that you are providing for free is very much the nonprofit NPR model of how we want to make sure that good journalism is getting out there. So how would you describe what's like the strategy that is being used in order to kind of help remain financially sustainable while still staying true to your mission?
Well, I think the key is that, whereas the old model is an advertising-based model. You sell ads, you make money, you do journalism on the other side, and you reap the profits. Our strategy now of necessity is that we need to find multiple sources of income. It's not just an ad-based thing anymore. Now, the bedrock, just like a subscriber base for a newspaper was kind of the bedrock, same with us, our members. And you allude to like the NPR thing. That's kind of the model we have. We're free, but if you like what we do, we're going to ask you to give us money. And we've got, I think we're up to about 15,000 now of members, as we call them. So that's key. That's the bedrock. But one of the reasons we became nonprofit is that it opens up these other revenue channels as well, philanthropic organizations. I know if you looked at the Texas Tribune, maybe the most successful nonprofit news source. They had one guy, Evan Smith, who famously just went around the country talking to deep-pocketed people and found a lot of them who were willing to give money to the Texas Tribune, and it's kind of what we do now too. More and more, we have people devoted to that, to looking to grant opportunities, philanthropic organizations that want to give us money. And at the same time, we have to maintain that editorial separation that, yes, we're asking people for money, but no, you can't tell us what to cover and how to cover it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I think that if I recall, I can remember Larry Rickman, the publisher, like saying that there are times that there would be, offers to you all that he refused because of that very reason. So I think that's something that's very important to make sure that people understand that. So Brittany, talk a little bit about like some of the unique financial challenges that ethnic media outlets face.
Yeah, I will first just address how we've been getting creative, actually, and it's ringing a bell with having contributors want to support the work and also say, here's what I want you to cover. Back in my day, we would call that kind of like an advertorial. And we've, in the language, it kind of has evolved into being what's called sponsored content now. And within the exchange and with our ethnic media partners, we have really just sought out people who are aligned with our mission. They want to get the word out to these maybe hard to reach communities and really brand it so that it's very clear. So for example, the Colorado Health Foundation, they do an annual survey, and in collecting data as well as sharing back the data that they found, they have been a strong partner in collaborating with our partners, really just using it as a distribution point so that it doesn't stay within the Health Foundation itself. We've also done this with like Colorado Access and looking to do more with Colorado state departments, like within the state, they have to get messaging out. And I'm just thinking, why not use us as a tool and partner to help amplify those messages? Again, I think I really sell the trust factor because a lot of these publications, they're bilingual. They translate actually into multiple languages. We have some French speaking communities, like within Africa Digest, and of course Spanish. We have Mandarin, and I know I'm forgetting some, but you look at the city of Aurora alone, and just the vast range of languages spoken, and so being able to have that as a option as well to translate messages, from the state that they need to get out to the wide public, has been a game changer for us as well. I think just looking at the ecosystem again, that I just attribute a lot to the collab, as well as, and that's the Colorado News Collaborative. I don't want to speak in acronyms, but CME kind of formed within that, I think just having us be in that mindset of what can we do together, as well as the Colorado Press Association. They've been a strong partner, just really figuring out the infrastructure and how we work together. I know, Linda, your question was about the, I want to make sure I answer.
Yeah.
I think just as we're building our structure, being new, making sure that everything is very transparent, and that's from the amount of a sale, for example, to the split, making sure that everybody's comfortable and aware of, what money is coming in and how it's going back out. And Linda, let me know what was the question.
Just in terms of like those challenges that ethnic media, it's certainly a little bit different than what is happening in mainstream media. What specifically would you say is kind of a challenge that ethnic media is dealing with?
Yeah, I think before I feel like we've gotten to this crisis point, ethnic media, they've always worked pretty lean and efficiently, kind of using resources as they had them, whether it be small staffs or just limited in access to technology and tools. And so, again, I go back to our collaborative model, allowing access to happen. It really helps just support, and we say lift up every boat, because we're just stronger together. Like one newsroom really, literally was on its last leg, and they're still going to almost 3 years later. And I do not take all the credit, but it's because of them working within the ecosystem and story sharing. And again, just going back to utilizing resources efficiently. I think that is just a model that's where the future is. I don't think it's gonna be saved by one newsroom, but only in the collaborative model.
Right. I used to talk about the fact that, and Kevin made reference to the pitched battle between the Rocky and the Post. And really, at that point, just in those two newsrooms, even though there were a number of different news organizations, but in the Rocky Mountain News and the Denver Post, there were about 600 journalists. And that, to think about that and to think about where we are now, where even I think our collective strength, we may not be at 600.
Right.
And that to me, I think is definitely like one of the reasons why programs like Eyewitness, can help play a part in this, because of the fact that we have so fewer journalists and so many different ways that all these news organizations need to, what the things that they need to cover and need to make sure that they're covering. And I think that's, a perfect example of how we're using collaboration to help make some of these things better. And so Brittany, I really just have to, say that I'm so happy to see that collaboration with ethnic media, because it needs to come along just like every other news organization needs to, like, make sure we're all banding together and fighting the same fight.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So from there, let's talk a little bit more about collaboration, and essentially as it kind of tends toward collaborating around community and the communities that are there. So how do you think, and I'll start this question, I guess, with Suzie, about like, how do you think news organizations can better collaborate with their communities in order to make that work more impactful or go farther?
Yeah, I want to start by saying, because I want to emphasize, Kevin, like at the Colorado Sun, you don't get 15,000 people subscribing and supporting you if you're not producing the type of news that they care about and they need, right? And so that is something that we're trying very hard to do, is make sure that our reporting and the way we reach people is something that they need, to the point where they will, whether they give $5 or $500, at some point, they will say, I do not want this to go away, right? And that is a very deliberate effort. And the Sun has been brilliant at it. And I will say, like, I get the newsletter, so I get, the once or twice a year or whatever, when you do a campaign to ask for these types of donations. And so we are working on, as one of the reasons we're building newsletters, as a way to communicate individually with a more devoted audience, right? They've opted in, they really want your news. And then at some point to then go and ask them. I think it's something maybe traditionally, not the Sun, but other news organizations just haven't been good at asking, right? We just have relied on an advertising model, and Suzie Glassman, as a reporter, hasn't had to go to somebody and say, hey, do you like my work? Would you consider supporting it, right? And that's a little bit out of our comfort zones, but I think something that we've seen the Sun do and do it successfully, and like you said, NPR and other outlets. So we are leaning heavily into that at the Colorado Trust. So I just wanted to get that out. And then as far as collaboration, I think with the community, it's everything, right? I cannot begin to tell you how many stories I've written that came from a tip, right? Someone sent me an email, and then someone, I can't say I usually ever get a phone call out of the blue. It's usually an email, but just saying, like, hey, have you thought about this? Did you look into this? Were you at the meeting? Did you see this? Right. And those are the lifeblood, I think, of any reporter, right? So when we look at, I cannot be physically at school. I'm a mom, right? And school board meetings are, they're late. A lot of times I'm watching them virtually. So to have somebody who was there and maybe caught, overheard something, right, that wouldn't be in a transcript or on a video, and reaches out to me and says, hey, I overheard them talking about this. Maybe look into it. Like, I can't even begin to tell you how excited when I get those tips, right? So yes, the community is everything, and I wish, I think we put it out there. I put it in my newsletter. Like, if you have a tip, send me a tip. You can be anonymous. Like it really, part of the reason why I'm trying to build these more interactive tools is just to get people more comfortable with reaching out to reporters. I've even had some people, email me, and then I email them back. They're like, oh my God, you're like a person and you care what I think. And it's like, yes, I do. So yeah, I mean, we've talked about collaborating with other newsrooms, but collaborating with community members, it's, something that I love, I value, and I would just do anything to support more of it.
Mm-hmm. So Kevin, how do you think that journalism helps empower communities?
Well, I think a lot of it goes back to just the fact that they feel seen. I mean, you alluded to that very early on in our conversation. The fact that, hey, somebody's paying attention out there. Just a recent example that I can tell you, we did a series called What is a River, where we looked at the Arkansas River from its headwaters all the way to when it just kind of peters out at the Kansas border. And we looked at communities all along the way. And we talked about what their relationship was to the river. And one of the segments that I happened to write actually came from a reader's suggestion. This is down in Lamar. A woman wrote in to say, hey, do you guys know anything about the Big Timbers area? And we're like, well, what? I have no idea. What is that? So it turned into this, what to me at least was a very interesting story about an area that was anywhere from 50 to 75 miles long, depending on who you talk to, along the Arkansas River, that was huge trees. And it was a meeting place for indigenous tribes over the years. The history is just remarkable. It goes, back eons to the groups that use this, but all the way up to today, it has this significance as just sort of a geographical area. Now, the Big Timber, most of it's gone now. It got used over the centuries, but it still retains a lot of cultural significance for the probably half a dozen tribes that used to live periodically in that area. And so just making that connection with folks there and saying, oh, okay, yeah, we didn't know about this. Thank you for telling us. And now we're going to tell everybody about it. So is that empowering? I don't know. Maybe that's too powerful a word to say that it's empowering, but I think at the very least, it's allowing people to feel seen. Now, I think the empowerment side comes in probably more in a policy and political sense when your interactions with people and the stories you do wind up having direct impacts, whether it's legislative or some kind of policy decision that's made in healthcare, environment, you name it. I think that is what we generally tend to think of as empowering. Oh yeah, we're able to hold powerful people to account. We're able to have our agenda, our policy preferences heard. So in that sense, I think we try to hit empowerment in a number of different ways.
Yeah, I think that's great. So we're about 20 minutes from finishing up. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to drop those in the chat for our panelists. I'm gonna finish up, I think, with a question that I think to all three of our panelists, and it talks a little bit about the future. And I'm wondering from you all, what skills do you think aspiring journalists or even eyewitnesses like which might be interested in joining us on doing this work, what do you think are the skills that they should focus on in order to kind of thrive in in today's news ecosystem? And Kevin, let's start with you.
Well, I think that maybe the biggest one is to focus on the idea of accountability, not just for public officials, but for us. We're part of something that a number of media outlets are called the Trust Project, which is basically an effort to show people our work. This is how we report these stories. This is why you can believe it when we say, that these are the facts. Do we make mistakes? Yes, of course we do. So we have a robust system in place to correct any factual errors. But I think for young journalists coming up, that's got to be job one, is you're maintaining your credibility, I won't say objectivity because I'm not sure there is such a thing, but being conscious of your biases is maybe the best we can hope for. So I would say that's an area of focus, but also I think I've thought a lot about having gone to journalism school to be a journalist, and would I do it differently now? And in some ways, I think yes, that I would focus on an area of expertise. I went to the University of Missouri, one of the more renowned journalism schools in the country, and I learned how to write stories and edit stories and all of that. But I think there's something to be said for having an area of expertise that you can then apply those journalistic skills to. So, if I were doing it again, maybe I would major in journalism, but I might double major in something else, whether it was business or public policy or what have you.
Or hockey.
Or hockey. That would be a good one. Linda knows me too well.
Brittany, what skills would you want to see out of aspiring journalists?
I really appreciate the teaching that they give me. I think I alluded to that earlier, just learning from them. But I would say for sure being open to collaborate and receive feedback. I really love this conversation around how journalism does empower community, and just recognizing the responsibility they have, informing people of their rights, and really, I think it's just a service to community that, yeah, maybe doesn't get the credit it deserves when you really think about it. And so that's why, I say today I'm a local media advocate. Maybe having the young people as well recognize that opportunity to serve and show up civically in that way. And I'm looking in the chat at this question, examples of how the various groups cooperate. And let's see, residents from Francophone. Right. So I'll just give a very real example. I know I mentioned the Health Foundation, but also we're working with the Denver Airport. They have a snacks and souvenirs expo, and they want to diversify their mix of vendors that are showing up to this particular event. And they have several, this is just one example, but like 3 different business opportunities throughout the year to become a vendor at the airport. They're wanting to just open it up to the state and not let language be a barrier, wanting to just target new audiences that they haven't before. And that to me is just, it's very fulfilling to know that this information can go directly to the communities. It's coming, in their inbox and just right where they're receiving it. I think it's the ultimate example of meeting people where they're at, but the airport recognizes this as an opportunity to, speak directly to the reader or sometimes even listener. We also have 2 radio stations, The Drop and Kuvo, with Rocky Mountain Public Media. And so being able to have that multimedia aspect as well has been so helpful. And so that's a very good question. Just, I think I understand you're asking how, a French speaker who might be reading Afric Digest is also receiving the Spanish speaking or the Spanish translation. Let me know if I'm not reading that correctly, but it's more so for the advertiser. Like, it's really a win-win all around, but when an advertiser comes to us, they recognize that it's the audience that they're getting access to. And the translation services, if that's wanted or necessary, sometimes they have their own in-house marketing team who prepare and do everything. And again, we're used as a distribution platform, but can be a content partner as well.
Great. Thank you, Brittany. Suzie, why don't you answer the question regarding aspiring journalists? And then I do have another question for the 3 of you that comes from someone in our audience. But okay. Suzie, what skills would you want to see? And when I say aspiring journalists, that isn't just students. That's anybody who would be interested in doing this sort of good reporting work.
Yeah, I was going to add, I did go to journalism school. I did get a journalism degree, but I didn't become a news reporter until about 5 years ago. So, but I was thinking about this. For anyone, I would say really develop your sense of curiosity. I think we take so many things that are part of our daily lives as just this is the way it is. And I think one of the things that helped me the most is to say, well, why is it like that? Why does school start at 7:30 and get out at 2:30? Why does, just why, be like a toddler, right? And ask and I was saying also the curiosity and the observation, right? So I lean into, what are my friends talking about? What, when you get together for a meal with your friends, what is that natural conversation, and what are those kind of grievances, and what you should be talking about, and what matters in your community, and then like find the answers. I think one of the coolest thing about being a reporter is like I'll talk to a parent or a source and they've been struggling to get a question answered and I'm running up against a brick wall and I'm like, I got it, right? Because I call and say, like, this is, Suzie, reporter, journalist, whatever. And then all of a sudden they have to answer my question. So I would say, yeah, your curiosity and your observation skills, I think the more that you can hone those and even maybe keep a little journal or jot things down when you're out that you can come back to. Those are the skills that like make a good reporter, no matter what age you are, right? Or observer. Yeah, and then did you want to go into the other question?
Yeah. So Kay asks, how are you helping the public distinguish between fact and opinion, or as a blogger, my point of view?
It's a good question. I think standard journalism, it's pretty obvious. Yeah, a columnist is more of an opinion, right? What we see in a traditional like op-ed. It's harder on social media, right? But I think, you know, fact is going to be backed up, right? You're going to be able to have, I'll say like, according to some source, right? Some reputable source. I think some of it is just being media literate and knowing, are they referencing like some, a right-wing organization or a progressive organization? Sometimes you have to Google on your own and do some research. As a blogger, I agree with Kevin. I think there's no such thing as this journalism that has zero sort of perspective or quote unquote bias. We all bring something to a story. Even the story I choose to cover is somewhat of my own bias, right? And I think that's what Brittany was saying. Like, we need more diversity because I'm bringing a Caucasian female perspective to like just what I'm choosing to write about, right? So going into that, like we need more of that. But yeah, I would say just being very, very clear, like this is my opinion, but it's based on these facts, or it's based on, a conversation I had. It's based on what I saw, right? So like, yes, it's my opinion, but here it's a very well-informed opinion. I think like as a blogger, you can certainly do. And I think one of the best things we can do as journalists is engage with people who don't have the same opinion as us. So, I respond to people when they don't have the same opinion as me. And, we talk about that and sort of things. But yeah, I do think those lines are a lot blurrier, but I think just being aware enough to ask the question means that, you're probably pretty savvy and you're at least thinking about it. So yeah.
Yeah. Kevin, how about with you? I mean, how are you helping the public distinguish fact from opinion?
Well, it's interesting. We've got some very straightforward ways that we do it. And it's when you're in the business, you look at people who can't tell the difference and you say, how can you not understand this? There's the the news side and there's the opinion side. Why don't you understand this? But people don't, and it's understandable. So we have really kind of gone back to basics. Every story that we write, we have what we call credibility indicators on a story, and right at the top, right by the byline, it'll say if it was original reporting, if it was on the ground or boots on the ground reporting, if we were actually there on site, if we're a subject specialist in that particular area. You can find that on all of our stories. So that's something that we do just as a matter of form on every story, just to show up front. We're going to tell you this is why you can trust this. And that's to answer that question, is it part of the Trust Project? I think we actually had this before that we signed on to the Trust Project, to be honest with you, because it's, as everybody has pointed out, credibility is your meat and potatoes. That's what you got to have. So we, from the very start, we wanted to make it very clear what's opinion and what's not. And to be honest, we've had discussions of whether or not, should we even have opinion at the Colorado Sun? Should we have op-eds? Is it worth it? Because, sometimes people don't understand what's opinion and what's not. And, is that confusion worth the cost? Now, the other side is people say, oh, no, we need a public forum, where we can write in and you can express different points of view. So, we've kind of had that ongoing conversation. Obviously, we've come down in favor of, having opportunities for opinion writing as well. But in a very basic way, we just need to label it as such so there's as little misunderstanding as possible.
Right. I think, and this is something we've talked about for decades, about the fact that it's all about transparency, that it's all about saying, here's what we know and here's why we know it and here's how we learned it. And that having those kinds of conversations, because so much of it was like, oh, well, this is just something you should know. I think we're past that now. We need to make sure that we're showing our receipts in a lot of ways.
Absolutely.
I think that ends up becoming the thing that helps people understand, oh no, and being very honest about, this is my opinion. CSU, best university in the state. And, so it's that sort of thing where it's like, okay, why is that my opinion? And, and everything that goes along with that. But that's, I can back it up with a lot of receipts. So, but anyway, I just want to say thank you. We're about 5 minutes from the end, and I just want to say thank you to Suzie and to Brittany and to Kevin for sharing your insights and your expertise. I think that this is a really important conversation. The work and perspectives that you all have provided today, and of course the work that you're doing, all of you, is just really invaluable to the future of journalism, and then by that extension, our community. And to our audience, I hope that this discussion has inspired you to think critically about the role of news organizations in your communities, and that the things that we can do and all contribute to a more informed and equitable and empowered society. If you'd like to learn more about the work that we're doing with the Eyewitness Program, you can go to lwvcolorado.org/eyewitness, and you'll find some information there. Certainly, I think that anything that we can do in order to help support these organizations, these news organizations, that we can use to help support everything that goes forward, it's going to be better for all of us. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Crystal or Cindy. And thank you so much for allowing us to take up some minutes of your time.
I want to first thank all of you guys for coming. I want to thank our journalists for joining us. It's been a fantastic discussion, very illuminating. I hope everyone also felt that way. I want to thank all of our Observer Corps folks and Eyewitness folks who are in the audience. I see you. Thank you. And I'm about to put my email address again for anyone in Jeffco who is interested in being part of the program and wanting to join us. Just reach out. I'll get you set up with everything and we'll get you started.
Thank you, Crystal. And I want to just echo everything that Linda and Crystal have said. Thank you to everyone who attended. Special thanks to the folks who are doing our Observer Corps and Eyewitness programs. It's just been really gratifying for me to watch how this has all worked this year. And I think it's really, really wonderful. And just want to thank Brittany and Kevin and Suzie for taking their time and being here with us. This is a very important topic for the League because voter education, of course, is based on having fair and honest journalism. And we have other programs that are going on right now. There's the Mis and Disinformation program that we're running. And the state of Colorado does a lot of programs through their news access and literacy program as well. So if you're interested in the topic, please reach out. We can make sure that you're aware of what's going on. And I think it's time now to end the meeting, and just again, gratitude and appreciation for all of you for attending.